Now if I want to remove RIP, okay, and enable ERGRP, can you help me how to do that? So implementing ERGRP. I expect you should know how ERGRP operates. I'm not here to teach you what is ERGRP. Hope you understand this, yeah? So going back to my routers, which is I1, no router rep. Let's go to 2, no router rep. Let's go to 3, no router rep, and also on 4. And on the ASA, so I've enabled removed RIP from the routers. On the ASA, what should I do to remove RIP? Always when you want to do that, so when you say route, see, understand, when you configure this command called as route, keyword, you normally configure static routes and default routes. So with this command, your static and default route will be removed. If you give the command as clear configure router, start with router, routing protocols command, everything will be removed. If you want to be specific, you can do like that as well. Clear configure router RIP. Now, nothing is available. Okay, so if you see show run router, if you do, there is no protocol that is running in this particular ASA. So now to implement ERGRP, I mean, the only one catch is the way ERGRP works. It has got an internal AS number concept. I mean, it has an AD value of 90 for internal ERGRP, 170 for external ERGRP. For summary route, it has got 5. I mean, it goes with the concept of topology table, successor, feasible successor. It has got the concept of, query domain, right? Second active routes. So ensure, the way it works, the behavior does not change. The behavior is absolutely not similar, okay, operation wise. What gets different is basically the implementation of ERGRP on a router iOS versus on an ASA iOS, okay. So on ASA operating system, the basic thing you should remember is when you implement OSPF or ERGRP, we know that we normally give wildcard mask with the network statement. It does not support wildcard mask on ASA. It supports normal subnet mask. Okay, that's the most important thing. So operation wise, I mean, it is absolutely same. Operation is same, no changes. Configuration wise, ERGRP implemented on ASA does not support what? Wildcard mask. We enable it with subnet mask. Okay, so for example, how do we do that? We say router ERGRP on ASA, right? On ASA, we'll say router ERGRP, whatever AS number, say 100. We'll define no auto summary because ERGRP also works like, distance vector. So no auto summary, network. So I want to run ERGRP on 10.11.11.0. I can be specific. So I can say you run only on this interface and be specific with the subnet mask. So on the router iOS, you normally define what? Wildcard mask like that, right? But instead of this, you're defining what? Subnet mask in case of firewalls. If it is classful, we'll define it like that without the mask, right? So implementation wise, no difference. Mostly what we'll do is we'll do authentication and also we'll run ERGRP routing. So what we are doing is use the command which is clear configure route on ASA to remove router RIP, right? Sorry, clear configure router RIP. This command we are giving on the ASA to remove what? RIP process. router rip on the routers to remove rip, configure EIGRP AS100 on all routers, ensure all the LAN networks are known to the ASA through EIGRP updates. And for authentication, let's say we do this. EIGRP, by the way, supports only MD5 authentication. It does not support clear text. So we need to configure MD5 auth, say between ASA and the outside router R2 using key string of say Cisco -EIGRP, like that. That is my password. So if I define a class list, then I can be specific that I want to run only on this particular network, right? But I cannot do that in case of RIP. This possibility is not there in case of RIP to be specific for a particular classless interface. So what we do is on the ASA, on the routers, let's go and configure first on the routers, EIGRP process. So going back to R1, RIP is removed. So we say router AS number is 100, no auto summary, network. If I want to run network on all the 10.series interface, I can be like that, 10.000, 255, 000, like that. But if I want to be specific, I can do like that, 10.11, 11.0, 000, 255, network 10.110, and 10.10.0, and 10.20. Right. So if you see show IP protocols, you will see EIGRP is running with the respective metric parameters, and there's a specific network it is running for. And if you see show IP EIGRP interface brief, show IP EIGRP interface, it normally shows for which interface you are running the process for. So couple of Ethernet, couple of loopback. All right. So similarly, EIGRP maintains neighbor table. You know that it has hello packets and maintains neighborships. So if I see right now show IP EIGRP neighbors, I don't have any neighborship from with the inside router to anywhere else. So until and unless I configure EIGRP on the ASA on G00 interface, hello packets won't be exchanged and neighborship won't be formed. So let's go to R2, run EIGRP there as well. Router EIGRP AS100, no auto, network 10.220, supports wildcard mask on the routers. It's classful, so not giving the mask. Run EIGRP in all the respective ports. R3, router EIGRP 100. Should remove the old one if you done a mistake. You can run multiple AS number on a local router. And on R3, we should know that we are running for loopback and the interface, so which is 10.330 and 192.168.3.0. Likewise, we are going for R4, 100, no auto summary. So R4 is basically my 10.4 and 192.168.4. So this is 192.168.4.0 and 10.440. So enable EIGRP on the surrounding routers. Now the time has come to enable EIGRP on the ASA. So on the ASA, what we do, same command, no difference, only the mask is, wildcard mask cannot be applied, we normally apply subnet mask. So we go to the ASA, we normally say router ERGRP my local AS number 100 because that has to match with the neighboring routers. The AS number must be the same to become neighbors. Auto summary, network 192.1.20.0, network 192.168, what is that, 3.0, 4.0. Since they are classful, I'm not defining the mask over here. But for the inside network, which is 10.11.11.0, if I want to become specific, I can give the mask as 255.255.255.0. Right, so run ERGRP in all the 4 interfaces as well. So because of which what will happen is if I see show ERGRP neighbors from my ASA, I should see that I have got 4 neighbors. And the neighborship starts with this is called as a handle value. So this is the order of neighborship 0, 1, 2, 3. So you first become neighborship with 2, then you become neighborship with 3, 4, and R1 respectively. And the interfaces by which you receive the neighbor and the hold down time, which is basically the counter time bit of the hello packets. So if you see that, you normally get the hello packets every 5 seconds on the interface. So hold down time is 15 seconds. So time will be vary between 15 to 10 on per interface basis. So 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, back to 14. So the whole idea is every 5 seconds you are getting the hello packets from the neighbors. So yep, ERGRP is enabled on the ASA and it is running on the ports, neighborship is established. And if you go to any of the routers, for example, if you go to R1, it is inside router and you give show IP ERGRP neighbors, you find the neighborship has been established with the firewall, right? So now the important thing to understand that how to enable ERGRP on a firewall interface, right? By giving network command. So you go to the ASA, we give router ERGRP AS number, no auto summary, give the network command, enable those networks, and because of these statements, it runs the process on the respective interface. So ERGRP as a service, ERGRP as a service gets enabled on the port when you give network command. So because of which this multicast IP, which is 224.0.0.10 for ERGRP, is running on these interfaces. All right, so when R1 sends an ERGRP update as a multicast, ASA interface G00 will receive it, right? And he will process the update and store that in its ERGRP topology table and routing table. And from there, it can forward the update to other interfaces, right? So if I look into the ERGRP routes on the ASA now, I can verify that. If I go to ASA and see show route, but only for ERGRP, I can see that I've learned this as an ERGRP updates 10.1, 10.2, 10.3, 10.4, all my inside the DMZ networks and also the outside networks. I see the AD value is 190. The metric is a composite metric. We know that with respect to the K values, bandwidth, delay. And can anyone tell me why the algorithm is, why the keyword is D here? So ERGRP runs something called as diffusing update algorithm or dual, because of which the keyword is D over here. All right, so the ASA knows all the ERGRP updates, and likewise ASA, once it learns it from one segment, it can give it to other segments. So for example, if I go to R1, and see here show IP route, right? And to reach all these ERGRP routes, my next stop is the firewall. Likewise, if I want to go to R3, show IP ERGRP neighbors, you have a neighborship with ERGRP with your firewall. Show IP route ERGRP, you have all the routes exchange. And last but not the least, with R4, do show neighbors, neighborship is there, do show IP route ERGRP, you have all the ERGRP routes. And same thing, the pings cannot happen from inside to outside or from DMZ to outside, because you know the concept why, but you can send HTTPS traffic, basically TCP UDP traffic from high SQ to low SQ, and that will happen. So now just to verify it, I can go to R1, there is my inside router, I try to ping outside 199.111, not going to happen because of ICMP. Echo reply is not allowed to come back from outside to inside. But if I do a telnet 2.199.1.1.1, this will work. If I do show users, I can see 10.11.11.1 has logged in. All right. Last thing for ARGRP is your authentication part. So ensure you run authentication of MD5 between the ASA and R2, right? So how do you do that? Going to R2, QC show run interface. What interface I have on R2 is E00. I configured RIP authentication earlier, right? So if I see show run interface E00 on R2, since RIP is removed, so all the configurations of RIP is also removed from the interfaces. All right, so on this router, I have to configure your ARGRP authentication. So first, I define a keychain. So keychain name, say it is EIGRP, EID say it is 1, key string say it is, as per the objective, it is Cisco EIGRP. And ensure that this key string, whatever you define, it is actually case sensitive. Okay, so if it is uppercase, lowercase, ensure the similar key string has to be defined on the neighboring device. And also the white space characters are also there as a password. So if you give Cisco -EIGRP with a space, when the space is counted as a password character. Okay, so be very careful. So Cisco EIGRP is the password, let's say, and we enable this keychain onto my interface. So I go to interface E00. I say IP authentication mode EIGRP. Now this is a little funny, because though EIGRP supports only one type of authentication called as MD5, but though we need to specify this, okay, and we need to configure, and you can see that the neighborship will go down because one side is running with authentication and the ASA is not running with authentication yet. That's the important thing. So make sure both the sides has to run. And then on the interface, you define the keychain. So keychain is ARGRP 100, and the keychain is, what is the keychain? I think I gave ARGRP. Correct. And with this, if you see show run interface E00, what you've done, you went to the port and you define the authentication mode as MD5 for ARGRP, and you define the keychain ARGRP. And if you see show run section key, you can see you have got a keychain for ARGRP defined with these respective parameters. And ensure that now there is no neighborship, because you have lost the neighborship due to authentication. There's no neighborship with your firewall now. If I go back to the ASA, just to verify show ARGRP neighbors, I will not have neighborship because with R2 I have to run authentication. So going to ASA, enabling authentication now. So what we do is, it does not need keychain concept. I mean, we can enable the key string and the key ID directly on the port. So I go to interface, which is G02 on the ASA, connecting R2. You have to define this command called as authentication mode EIGRP AS number as MD5, and then you should say authentication key for EIGRP AS 100, which is Cisco -EIGRP in lowercase with a key underscore ID of 1. Okay, it takes key ID here. Okay, so for RIP it was underscore, and for EIGRP it is hyphen. All right. So done with this. So once you are done with this, and when you see show EIGRP neighbors on the firewall, you will see R2 came up as a neighbor right now on the outside interface. And likewise, if you go back to R2, you will see console message saying the neighborship is up with your firewall. And if you see show IP route, EIGRP, all the routes will be again learned. Is that clear? So going back, I mean, the most important thing that you take is how to configure this. I've told you, and for authentication, how do you run the authentication commands. That's really crucial for your deployment scenarios. So authentication, I gave you this, ensure you know the right commands. So on R2, what I've done is I have keychain, which is EIGRP. I have key ID of 1. I have a key string of Cisco-EIGRP. All right, and then I define the interface. I go to interface E00, and then I say IP authentication mode EIGRP 100 SMD5, and then IP authentication key-chain, which is for EIGRP AS100, and the keychain name. And on the ASA, what you do is very simple. Is you directly go to the interface for G02, authentication mode EIGRP 100 MD5, and authentication key EIGRP 100, which is Cisco-EIGRP, and this is key-ID 1. Right, ensure this is the steps to configure authentication.